Good morning. It's been a sad week for our congregation, and I'd like to light a candle to remember our good friend Giles. And our organist emeritus Gerard. Good morning and welcome to the meeting house of Auckland Unitarians, where services have run for the last 116 years. Our regular minister Clay Nelson is away in Europe on his way to Boston with his partner Rachel, so we get to enjoy a double bill of me and David Rohe today. The service doesn't finish until you have enjoyed a cup of tea and coffee with us. Afterwards, good morning to all our guests.
Here's an excerpt of a few conversations to be had tomorrow. So, what did you get up to yesterday? Me? I went to church in the morning. Not much in the afternoon, just puttered around the garden here at home. Church, eh? What church? Oh, the Unitarian church over in Ponsonby. Now, the conversation can go one of many directions. But for the purposes of our discussion this morning, I'll take it this way. What? You call that place a church? What are you guys doing there anyway? I can't imagine, since there doesn't seem to be any real religious stuff going on. From what I've heard, there are people in there that don't even believe in God, so what in the world would you call that place a church? To be continued.
The words for today's chalice lighting come from New Zealand's most famous heretic, Lloyd Gearing. The point of going to church is joining a group of people who help one another to face the future in faith, allowing considerably wide varieties of opinion and also accepting of people as they are.
Okay. Now for the meat and potatoes of why I wanted to do this thing today. First, check to see if you have something to write with. You're going to need it. I also have minions to pass among you to distribute writing implements if you happen to need one. Don't have yours available. Always doing these participative type things here. Okay. Now, you also, in your order of service, have an extra sheet of blank paper. That's what you're going to write on. Okay? Everybody ready? Good. We are starting with a quiz. Now, for any visitors here, you can participate as well. But you can ask a neighbor for the answer to the first question. Eyes on your paper, no cribbing, except you can talk to one another, okay? Write your version of the third Unitarian Universalist principle. No cribbing off the wall, please. Kibitz one another if you're stuck, but not the wall. Anybody need more time to write? If not, check the wall. How'd you do? You did okay. Good for you. I bet you know it now, though, don't you? Now for the second question. Write in a single sentence a core spiritual belief you have, preferably something that is still developing. It is a spiritual principle that is important to you. It is something that informs your life and a part of your spiritual journey, the journey that restarts every day. Right. Okay? Now that you've written yours, share with an unrelated neighbor. The third principle requires us to accept one another and assist one another on our spiritual journeys. Each journey starts somewhere. And if we are to assist one another along the way, we at least need to know where we're starting. We have time. Take at least 5 minutes. Ha! I'll watch and call time in a bit. An unrelated neighbor. Good idea. So, did you learn anything so far? Learning's good. It's part of why we come here. I submit that the sharing we just did is, at least in part, why, yes, this is a church. UUs make their own personal, spiritual, and religious convictions, and you just shared some of your own and discovered someone else's. That sharing is part of what makes us a community. That's why we like it here, and that's why there are relatively few of us anywhere. Having to come up with what we personally really believe is just harder than accepting a given doctrine. Guiding our own spiritual journeys is difficult, but we have helpers here at church. We have a minister who provides fodder for our thought. We have guest speakers and events that can challenge and enlighten. We have times when we can challenge one another, confront if necessary, with opportunities to resolve conflicts, opportunities which are enormously strengthening for a group if they're successful. But it is at times when we can quietly explore on one another's journeys that can provide the glue that cements the group into something more than a debating society or some random organization that goes around the neighborhood knocking on doors for no apparent reason. That's a little joke. The intimate conversations about spiritual convictions held between and among members of the congregation can prevent us from being God's frozen people. You ever heard that phrase? But, and there's always a but, intimacy can be scary. You don't distribute it willy-nilly. I suggest we may tend to withhold it a bit right here in church. Anyone disagree? You're allowed to. Anyone who thinks I'm wrong about the state of intimate spiritual communication at Auckland Unitarian Church, look around. How many people in this room can you record an accurate description of his or her spiritual foundation? How many of you assisted along on a spiritual journey? It's the third principle. Yes, I'm getting a bit confronting here, but that's why I get the big bucks for doing this. Perhaps there's room for improvement in some of our church activities. Maybe. Sharon and the kids and I participated in Unitarian church activities right up until July 2000, when we left Connecticut for Cambodia, where we lived prior to New Zealand. That means it was a 12-year dry spell until we shifted to Helensville from Taranaki. And being here has been a breath of fresh air, even with our required hike in from Helensville. Why? Because it's our church. This is a community of similar-minded people, sharing a commitment to certain principles and working out how to explain them to ourselves and to others. Sharon still gets a bit tongue-tied trying to explain why we call this a church, since we violate many of the popularly held assumptions about what goes into being a church. I joined the Unitarian movement in 1975, when Sharon was 12. So I have a few years on her in developing my comfort level with the idea that, yes, we really are a church. I think my comfort level has been developed out of some of my experiences at the Augusta, Georgia Church, USA, where we managed to weather a congregational storm and came out solidly together in the knowledge of what it takes to produce a spiritual community, a church. That conflict crucible allowed me to see the advantages and challenges available in a Unitarian community. We are a Unitarian community, one that can support the spiritual development of its members, constituents, congregation. We have met the Unitarians, and they are us. So yes, this is a Unitarian church. Assuming we can honor our commitments to the 7 principles and the covenant we recite every week, I see a bright future for our church, our spiritual community. Let's hear it for principle 3. Amen. Now, according to my order of service, we can talk about it. Instead of sitting and thinking about it, you can actually say something out loud should you care to. It's called discussion. That's assuming anybody wants to say something.
So my name's John, and I think kind of uncommonly, I was raised Unitarian. I went to a Unitarian church in Grosse Pointe, Michigan when I was growing up, and I really benefited tremendously from the religious education program there. And I think one of the functions of a congregation of Unitarians is the RE program. And I'm really proud that as small as we are, we have that opportunity for the children.
My kids did too.
Hi, I'm Anne, and I wasn't raised from birth as Unitarian, but was brought in here around about 11 years of age by my parents seeking religious education because I was being bullied at school for not going to whatever standard, Christian place you're supposed to go to. And I just sort of realised in sort of discussing what I wrote down for the second question from David, that very much what I wrote down reflects what I've carried from that time forward in my thinking about, how we should be with other people.
This is short and sweet, but I'm just agreeing with both of them completely and utterly.
This morning, when I suggested to Leo that we get up and get ready to come to church, I said, I never dreamt that at my age I'd be going to church every Sunday, but there are very few Sundays we miss. And I think that a lot of it is that you share your life in the church with people who have basically the same beliefs, and you feel a welcome and belonging feeling here, and that's very precious to me.
While I have the opportunity, I struggle to say, I do it anyway, but I struggle to say I'm going to church, I went to church, because I think that I need to explain, because I feel a strong need to communicate with people and, not just superficially say something and know that I'm misunderstood. So does anybody have any suggestions? Because I feel like if I say I'm going to church, I have to say, but it's not what you're thinking. It's something different, It's like really open-minded, and you know, everyone's welcome there, and you don't have to think a certain thing or believe a certain thing. But how can I say it? And I struggle with this thing about, well, what are they thinking? And it's not what I'm thinking.
I have that same issue, but I like the tagline that we have. I don't know if you've seen on the order of service, love beyond belief. So this is a church that it doesn't matter, you don't have to believe the same to love the same. I think that's what makes us different. It's not about belief here. It's about love and community and connection. And you're free to believe what you want as long as you accept those principles, the actual specifics of the belief. So I just like saying love beyond belief. It's got a double meaning, doesn't it? So love beyond belief and...
I think that even saying I'm a Unitarian, I struggled for many years to even say that, because I think it makes me in a box, and I'm not in a box. So, but people think that if you go to church, you are in a box.
A wooden box. In the foyer, we do have the little red and white cards, which have, one is what Unitarians believe, and one, I think, is the guiding principles. So something handy to have in your wallet for when people ask those questions.
Yeah, I'm Willem, and I'm very pleased to hear that the word church is used here, because for me, the church is beyond the mind, it's beyond the heart. It's that mysterious part which we explore, and I think that's what it's all about for me. It's not intellectual, it's not debating. I'm almost a favor of calling it a church rather than a meeting house. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bit off topic really, but follows on from what's being said. In that I'm always in favour of calling it a church, and I got to talking to somebody at Giles' funeral on Thursday, a visitor, and Viv had already talked about atheists being in the church, and so he kind of mentioned that and said, well, you know, how is the church, and isn't it more of a kind of, you know, philosophical meeting place? And I said, well, if you like, but, you know, that, for me, that's a church. You know?
I like the fact that we get to define what a church is, and that a church doesn't have to mean what the fear is that people will assume. If you say you're going to church, then it means specifically Christian, specifically with views, you know, and I mean, it's not like I can speak for all Christians, but bits of the Old Testament I don't want a bar of. And it's nice that we can call this a church and not have any part of that if we don't want to.
What I just realized what I've come to say is that we're pretty open-minded, and the fact that my transgender son was the religious education teacher for the first year he came out as trans kind of lets them know how much different it is than what they might be thinking.
Don't worry, I didn't tell them that you were all a bunch of atheists. But I did say we're a welcoming place that does welcome people even like me, who is an atheist. And I really wanted to stand up and say something, because we had these 100 people sitting here thinking, I'm sure some of them think that you know, it's a fundamentalist or whatever they're thinking, and I wanted to just put it straight. And I don't know why I'm always thinking like that. I'm always trying to think, oh, I don't want them thinking I'm a fundamentalist.
a simple way of looking at it from my perspective is it's not just that we're Unitarians, we're also universalists. And church has so traditionally been defined as an us and them. And I think it's just us.
Just coming from the point when I first discovered that the Bible and religion are two completely different things. Reading that in the Bible it's described where two or more are gathered. In my midst, the church is there. So it's not here. It's where we are, where we're talking about this, where we're sharing each other's love, growing each other spiritually. That's where the church is. It's not. We do it Sundays here, maybe, but it's in a daily occurrence.
A few weeks ago, I went to a real church, the Anglican Cathedral in Napier, which is a wonderful building and a good example for Christchurch to build something new. But their order of service was 6 pages covered in text that you read through. And being a Unitarian, you read forward to make sure you don't swear oaths or become baptized or that kind of thing. It was a very interesting experience, but it was wonderful. I didn't catch fire for all my sins either.
I will just add this one more comment about the royal wedding. So when I was a youngster in Grosse Pointe, we were instrumental in a very, very white neighborhood in bringing Martin Luther King Jr. to speak. And this past week, reading about the royal wedding and Meghan Markle's mother being there meant a lot. It meant the whole world is progressing in the direction of universalism and acceptance of others, even there.
Hi, I'm David, and I'm not quite sure how to define this, but I just wanted to comment that I found the question of please writing down some spiritual truth that is important to us very challenging, and thank you for the challenge. I guess I have a few parts of ill ease about this idea of being spiritual. What it's worth to you.
Very good. Thank you. It was intended to be a participative morning, and you made it so. Thanks.
I get to sneak in some closing words. Why did God create atheists? What lesson can we learn from atheists, and why did God create them? God created atheists to teach us the most important lesson of them all, the lesson of true compassion. You see, when an atheist performs an act of charity, visits someone who is sick, helps someone in need, and cares for the world, he is not doing so because of some religious teaching. He or she does not believe that God commanded them to perform this act. He does not believe in God at all, so his acts are based on the inner sense of morality. And look at the kindness they can bestow upon others simply because they feel it to be right. When someone reaches out to you for help, you should never say, "I pray that God will help you." Instead, for the moment, you should become an atheist. Imagine that there is no God who can help, and say, "I will help you."
And my closing words are, the road to real spiritual growth can be bumpy, with dead ends and detours. Finding my way often ain't easy. That's what a supportive community is for. Stick together, challenge one another, support one another, continually recreating a church. Amen.